Okay. Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of the Low-Key Variety Hour, the art talk podcast that hopes to always give you a fresh perspective on the pieces of art we talk about. My name is your Low-Key Productions, and I'm your host. I'm here with my two co-hosts, Funkster.
Hello.
And Arcane Dinkster.
Howdy.
So, the way we're going to structure this podcast is a little different from like a lot of other art talk podcasts, so I'm going to give you the lowdown and then we're going to get right into it. So, we're going to be talking about the first season of ReZero this time, because that's the piece of art I've chosen to present. Next time, Arcane Dinkster is going to present something for us, then Funkster, and then we'll repeat the cycle. To start us off, we're each going to have 5 minutes maximum to talk and give our thoughts and interpretations about ReZero, and then we're all going to, do a bit of cross-examination, and it's going to be like, basically every other art talk podcast. To start us out and give us his thoughts on ReZero Season 1, Arcane Dinkster, you have the floor.
Alright. I'm not normally a huge anime person, and I understand that this might be like a thing that's relatively common across animes, but just the entire show, all of the characters and all of the situations are very, very... They tend to be very, clear-cut. And everything is just very pure, and every character has very, consistent traits, which I'm not, saying is a bad thing or anything, but it's just a lot sometimes. And I'm relatively not used to it as someone who doesn't generally watch anime, but it's interesting and entertaining, and it leads to a lot of kind of, situations where you're like, oh, this is the ideal case scenario, but then you're like, well... I'm the kind of person that likes to reflect things back on your life. I'm going that would never happen. I'll get into that in a second. But, with some of the characters, like Rem and Ram, and Rim and Ram, they're always just very, first of all, way more violent than you would expect. Second of all, they're very pure dedication to whatever it is they're dedicating it to. Whether it's the main character or each other. But it's I would argue that just about every single one of these characters pursues their, traits to a fault in a lot of ways. Subaru's love for Amelia and whatnot is, both of them have this thing where they're oh, we love each other so much and put each other first so much, even to the detriment of ourselves, to where they will make them, overall, it's just a worse situation, because they're both sacrificing so much so that the other person can have just a little extra quality of life. But then they both do it, so I feel like they both end up worse in just a lot of situations. And I feel like that's also what happens in real life if you, do that, is that you end up just having a situation where both people are I'll self-sacrifice for the other person, to the extent that they're making stupid decisions that are just inefficient. It's a classic, that one story that's the wife sells her hair so that she can buy a harmonica case for the husband, and the husband sells his harmonica so that he can get a nice comb for the wife.
I have zero clue what you're talking about.
Well, that's fine. But it's the whole, a lot of people look at that story and they're like, oh, that's so touching. And I look at that story and I'm like, they're stupid. They should have communicated, and they shouldn't have put each other so far first, because now they're both in a worse situation. He's got a case with no harmonica. She's got a comb with no hair. And neither of them should do it. And it's maybe I'm just a bitter pessimist or something. But I don't see that as I see that as more... I can see why people see it as oh, that's so cool and lovey and so sweet. I think it's just inefficient and dumb, and it puts everyone off in a worse situation. Overall, a couple of interesting characters, to say the least. I did think that the cat guy was a little bit weird, a little bit out there, but, I mean, that's fine. I still... Also, I know that we've only watched season 1, but part of me is throughout the entire show is Beatrice is evil. Beatrice is going to do something. Beatrice is going to be a traitor. But that hasn't happened yet. So, We shall see. We shall see. I guess I don't know if I'll ever watch season 2 because this is the only anime I've ever watched without like other people and just like watched on my own because I needed to for the podcast. Not much else immediately comes to mind. Although I do want to say some of the whole cult in the third arc is, I was kind of sitting there, I'm like, I wonder if this is just a general criticism of religion, because it does seem to be like, I know plenty of people that aren't nearly as deranged or anything as this, but there are plenty of people that are like, Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, and take religion, I think, way too far. And I say that as someone who is quite religious. Also, this might be something for later discussion, but the hoods and the pointy outfits, they were black, but they very much, I was like, these look like they were based off of the KKK. But, that's just a thought. That might be a complete shot in the dark. Overall, good show. Very strange characters, but I guess that is a pretty par for the course for anime. Despite me being a pessimistic person when it comes to, like, overly idealistic lovey-dovey stuff, the last scene was really pretty, even though I did think it was kind of overly idealistic, and it wouldn't work in real life. It was, a pure love, and real love is more complicated. And also, you just can't be that direct in real life, but...
I'm going to have to cut you off now. Your 5 minutes are up. Alright. Now it's your turn, AJ. Give us your thoughts.
Alright. Not gonna lie, I don't know if I have like a full 5 minutes to talk about this. But I feel like I really enjoyed the first season of ReZero because they have they have the whole loser archetype of like, oh, loser man goes into strange world, isekai, classic bullshit, right? But then it was like the first anime to my knowledge where instead of them being like, oh, they can do great things, oh, like, even though they're a loser, like, in this world, they can have the full restart and be in a good place, or do good things. Subaru's he's just a loser even in this world. He just gets beat the shit out of. He, like, the only thing he really has is the starting over in a new life, or starting over every death. And, I like how they still give him, like, every single season, at least leading up to the whole one-on-one with Ram later on in the season. I feel like the show just constantly shoves into the face of Subaru was like, whoa, hold on to your horses, man. Can't get too onto yourself, alright? You're still a bitch. And then, I will say, in terms of, like, I don't know, like, everything else, like, I just feel like it just feels like a good-ass anime. Like, I got a couple of flaws in that regarding, I feel like they completely disregard Rem questioning Subaru with, like, the smell of the witch and, like, her trauma with that whole thing way too quickly. Like, I get it in the kind of the reason of, the reason she was going after him is because he was just existing in the mansion and he had the smell, so it was like a questioning of like, he must be suspicious. But then he starts doing good and it's like, oh no, he's fine. I feel like she would still question that. I feel like she would still be like on his ass of like, hey, yo, you're sus. Cause you smell like you're affiliated with this horrible person that ruined my life. And anyone affiliated with her is always ruining somebody's life. So, what's up? But, no, she immediately disregards it when he starts doing good with the mansion, and then slowly starts falling in love with him. Which, is like, whatever. And then, like, the only other flaw I have is one full episode, which is the whole, like, board meeting where they have all of the different candidates of the rule over the kingdom in the room, and like how nonchalant everyone and is actually really taking it, except for the people up top. Like, I get the girls because they're like immature, they're rich, they're like, a lot of them are just really prissy and like full of themselves. But like, then you have the guardsmen, and even like half the guardsmen, except for maybe the huge army, weren't really taking it seriously. They were like they weren't letting it just happen. They were always having to like conflict with they're the parts where they're conflicting with everybody, and you could tell with like the older men at the top, they were like trying to just continue on. But I feel like more of a, I don't know, I feel like a better written situation would have like the guys at the top actually get onto them a little bit and be like, hey, stop, because you know they may not have power over these candidates for the queens, but they do have power over the soldiers, I feel like. But I don't know. That's about it, really.
Okay, yeah, that's good. You know, it's good. All right, and now it's my turn. So, I mean, ReZero, right? What is there to say about this show that hasn't already been said, it feels like? But I really love ReZero. There are, like... I've gone on kind of a journey with ReZero as far as, like, my opinions on it are concerned. Because, you know, the first time I watched it, I absolutely fell in love with it. And it was just, like, one of the best things I've ever seen. But, like, as I've continued to engage with it, well, it's still a story that I have, like, a lot of love for and a lot of appreciation for. There are, like, things that I wouldn't necessarily say are, like, flaws of the writing, but just kind of, like, are more things of personal preference that I don't particularly like. And I think one big thing that I just want to bring up here, and I apologize because I don't think you're ever going to be able to unhear this once I bring it up, but the dialogue of ReZero, the way it's written, kind of annoys me sometimes because, like, every single character has this way of talking where, like, they always basically make it so that they speak in a way to where it's impossible to, like, misinterpret them in a sense. Like, it's a bit hard to describe without me, like, being able to show you the show, but, like, oftentimes characters will, like, say a sentence that I feel like goes on too long because they, like, want to make sure that the audience interprets it correctly, you know? Or they'll say something like, well, I could have felt that way, but I actually feel this way. And, like, I'm not trying to say, like, oh, show don't tell, blah, blah, blah. I think that's dumb. Like, my main point isn't to say, like, the writing is bad. It's just something that kind of annoys me sometimes because it's like sometimes it works for me and sometimes it doesn't. I really think it's more a matter of personal preference. But yeah, it's just something that I can like not ignore once I start to notice it. But you know, really, I want to just talk about how much I love ReZero. Because this really is an incredible story. One that tells an incredibly gripping tale about love and sorrow. Like, on a macro storytelling level, Subaru's arc is just so good. I mean, he starts out in this world, you know, with, like, nothing aside from, like, the opportunity to try and restart and do things better. Because, you know, as is shown very explicitly in episode 18, Subaru feels like he failed in his past life. So he does see this opportunity to restart as, like, an opportunity to do everything better. And it's very quickly shown that, like, without a true understanding of this world and what he can actually accomplish, he's not going to get very far at all. Like, the example I think puts it quite clear is how he keeps running into the same three thugs in the first arc, which, like, he tries to chalk up to fate, but is very clearly just because he, like, doesn't know where he's going and isn't smart enough to not avoid them. But then, like, starting in the second arc, one thing that I actually, like, picked up on in this viewing, because I've watched the show multiple times, that I didn't notice before, is I really like how the show, in this arc of the story, has Rem act as a foil to Subaru. Because Subaru's main flaw that he has to overcome in this arc is that he only really thinks about himself and, like, what he wants. He's not a dick, so it's not like he is going out of his way to hurt other people, but the fact that he only ever really thinks about, like, how things can benefit him means that he fails to, like, endear himself to the mansion staff and make him seem like he is trustworthy. And his, like, greatest antagonist up until he confronts the Mob Beast in that arc is Rem. And Rem is somebody who, like, basically lives entirely for her sister. So in a different way than Subaru, she also is really like only thinking about herself in a way, because like her sister's Rom is the like only thing on her mind, you know, because she's constantly thinking about how she's a replacement for Rom, how she's inferior to Rom, and these two characters are only able to like overcome these flaws by coming to understand each other, you know? Subaru feels like he has a better understanding of the sisters during like his worst loop there, right before he like purposefully kills himself to do everything right. And Rem comes to understand that, you know, she has value as an individual whenever Subaru basically just screams it to her face right before he goes off to face the Mob Beast. And then in the third arc, Subaru fucks up because he acts like a possessive little creep with Amelia and rightfully gets tossed out because of it. And so, like, when that happens, he doesn't really understand, like, he needs to do some self-examination. He's just like, oh, if there's a problem for me to fix, then I'll seem like I'm useful to her again. And, I can't really... We'll talk about it in the cross-examination! Which starts now. We've all given our individual thoughts, and now we get to talk to each other about ReZero. So,
well, first off, I think that there's something to be said for like these throughout the entirety of the show. They were like, "Oh, you're selfish, Subaru," which I really like. I understood like what they were getting at, like, "Oh, he's doing these other things for everyone." Like he's doing these things that are like for other people in air quotes that are really just for himself and all that jazz. But at the same time, it's like, the thing that they go for in the show is that he basically is, like, trying to be very self-sacrificial and whatnot for other people, but in the end, it's really just for him to get what he wants. So the show is like, oh, he's, like, a simp, but also selfish as fuck. And it kind of loses me. And I don't really agree.
Well, here's the thing. Here's how I feel about it. Like, the main thing you need to understand is, like, Subaru isn't necessarily a bad person, you know? It's just that he has a lot of bad traits. And so, like, when the show talks about him being selfish or whatever, it's like, it's not that, like, they're saying, oh, you shouldn't be trying to do good things, but it's more just, like, the ways in which he goes about, like, trying to accomplish his goals is a little scummy. Because I think the big example is, like, the thing with the royal selection and Amelia. Because, like, sometimes, you know, in order to really, like, help a person you care about, you can't just, like, do everything they said. But, like, in this instance, if Subaru really did care about Amelia and trusted her to take care about herself, he would have just listened to her and stayed at the mansion. But he didn't, because he had decided that she was somebody who needed his protection, when, you know, she really isn't, you know?
Yes.
She's an insanely powerful mage in all this. And, like, not only did he disobey, like, her instructions to go to the royal selection on the arm of another royal candidate, because he's a fucking idiot, he then, like, gets involved in this stupid, pointless feud with Julius just because, like, he wants to feel like he's got a big dick, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, which he still gets his ass whooped.
Yeah, exactly. And I like how... One thing I really appreciate...
Okay, I actually would maybe contest that point of, like, I feel like he knew that surely he must have known, at least at some level, that he was going to lose that fight. Because, and, like, just went anyway because he's one of those characters that is like, I'm gonna do what I want. So I really don't think that he was doing that as much as because of Big Dick, and more just because he's like, I'm stickler for, not necessarily, I don't know that morals would be the right word.
Well, no, because it's really just his pride, because, like, Julius insulted him and, like, called him out on a bunch of things he's insecure about in, like, you know, the royal selection, and he just, like, wanted to... Really, he just wanted to fight Julius to make it seem like, or at least it's my interpretation, to me it feels like he wanted to fight Julius to make it seem like he was somebody who, like, actually had resolve and, like, you know, behind his ideals. Because the big thing about that scene in the royal selection where, like, Subaru declares himself as Amelia's knight is, like, well... Because, like, even the show acknowledges, like, hey, the fact that you're so dedicated to, you know, your mistress is, like, pretty cool. Because, like, you know, dedication and stuff like that is cool, but, like, he was just claiming a title that he had really done nothing to earn in front of a bunch of people who'd like put in years of work and dedication, right? And so when Julius is like, "You're gonna call yourself a knight, bro?" Smack, smack, smack. You know?
I agree.
When it comes to the whole selfish thing, I feel like the show isn't really trying to tell Subaru that, like, I don't think anything really is telling him that him being selfish is bad. I mean, yeah, there are some of those characters that are being like that, but I feel like they're not showing that in a way of like, oh, they're right. I feel like, and if it's accentuated whenever Emilia confronts Subaru after the whole situation and kind of like separates from him for a while. It's like she's okay with him being selfish. She just needs to have him to stop lying to himself. He needs to stop lying to himself about that he's doing it for Emilia and just admit the fact that he's doing it for him.
Where I kind of like hop off that train is that it's acts like okay, most of us do everything that we do to some extent. Either it feels like the show makes the argument that he's doing it for himself because he cares about that person, of like, oh, you're doing this thing that you want, but you're doing this thing for her, but you want to do it, therefore you're just doing it for yourself, and that makes it selfish. By that definition, literally everything that anyone ever does is selfish.
Okay, I think you just misinterpreted there, because like, just look specifically at the scene between Subaru and Emilia. What Emilia is saying is selfish is like, Subaru is saying like, oh, I'm doing this for you, but the thing is like, if he was doing things for her, he should actually like listen to her and respond to her desires, but he never does.
Yeah.
At least like not until like near the end of this season. And that's what she's criticizing for. She's like, you're saying you're doing it for me, but I just told you to stay at the fucking mansion, bro.
Yeah,
and that's what they're criticizing, and that like he's saying he's doing it for her, but it's like really bullshit.
Which is kind of the, I guess it's tangential to kind of the point that I made about them being like, oh, I'm gonna be all sacrificey and whatnot for this person that I love, even if the other person is like, no, I want to be sacrificey for you, and it just puts everyone in a worse off position whenever you have that mentality.
Oh, right. I actually, now that we're doing cross-examination, I actually really want to contest you about that point, because I think that there are relationships in ReZero that do reflect that kind of mindset, and those are the ones that are, like, depicted as, like, harmful. Like, the big one for me is Rom and Rem, because, like, yeah, Rem dedicates herself wholly to Rom, and that's shown to be a bad thing, you know?
Yes.
And that's something she has to work past throughout the rest of the season. Like, she becomes more independent by, like, or not necessarily more independent, but she just, like, values herself as a person more. Whereas, like, with Subaru and Emilia, again, Subaru is criticized for, like, trying to, like, basically dedicate himself to Emilia. And I think what the show is really trying to say is, like, you have to actually, like, understand and, like, respect the person that you love. And, like, doing things for the person you love is great, but it, like, it requires you to actually, like, understand who they are instead of just, like, doing what you think, like, will make them happy.
And, like, Subaru's not doing it, like, at least for this, like, I'm trying to think here, until he has the whole one-on-one confront, or, well, even then he's doing it for himself, but, like, I'm trying to think here, he's not doing it for Emilia, and, like, when you're saying that, it was like they're saying, oh, you're doing it for Emilia, but you wanting to do it for Emilia is doing it for himself, and that's bad, or that's, like, that doesn't make any sense. I think what it is that he's doing it for himself because he wants to be with Emilia. And it's like, he wants to do good with Emilia to be with Emilia. And
like he's just trying to impress her and make himself seem like the ideal partner for her.
But like he does care about her. Like there's a like it's not like he doesn't care about her and only sees her as like a trophy or something.
Yeah.
It's evident with every single time anybody ever mentions her as like bad for being an elf or like looks at her less for being part elf. Like he's immediately on that.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not because that shows that he still cares about her and cares for her. It's just that he needs to accept the fact that he's doing it for himself to be with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of goes back to that point I made originally, where like Subaru isn't necessarily a bad person. You know,
Yeah.
like they're he has negative traits and they can really blow up in his face when he lets them consume him. But like, and I think a big example is like the mansion arc I was talking about before, because like. I talk about how Subaru's only thinking of himself during that arc, and I think that's true. But, like, at the same time, he's not trying to get, Beatrice, Roswell, or any of them hurt, because he's not a dick. He's not a bad person. It's just that, like, he can, like, work to get what he wants, I mean, I think that's even true with the fact that he gets his date with Amelia at the end of that arc.
Yeah.
It's just that he also needs to, like, consider that he lives in a world with other people, and he needs to, like, work with them and understand them and, like, be their friend.
Yeah. He, I feel like it isn't, like, when he has a confrontation with Rem, the one-on-one confrontation, he finally realizes those feelings and, like, comes to terms with them. And then it's when because he's come to the realization of how he feels towards Amelia and how he feels, about himself and everything, he is then able to finally confront Amelia personally and say, I love you, and actually get Amelia on the same page as to what he is.
Exactly.
And then then Amelia and Subaru can work towards,
Exactly, yeah, because he now understands,
thing,
where he went wrong and how he can do better and all
Yeah.
that. And that's, like, God, that scene is just so beautiful. Like, I love it.
It is a good scene, even for my bitter pessimist heart.
For real.
What I was going to say is something that one of you said just right now implied kind of that Subaru basically wasn't being direct because he didn't tell Amelia that he loved her or something along those lines. Would you say that in general, Subaru was just very direct? Because I thought Subaru was extremely direct all of the time.
Here's the thing, like, Subaru is very direct with his emotions. It's just like, the thing I interpret anyways is like, the other characters could tell whenever Subaru was like, kind of just like lying, even if not to intentionally, just like lying in the sense that he didn't really know what he felt. Because like, I think, again, back to the, big breakout between Subaru and Amelia, where like, he keeps trying to tell her that he did it for her, and keeps trying to convince her that like, it was an action, like fighting Julius and getting injured was something like he needed to do. And when she calls him out on his bullshit, he like doubles back and starts trying to make him like, he blows up at her and has that moment where he rants about like how he's done so many good things for her because like he just doesn't want her to leave him. Like he's kind of possessive that way.
Yeah.
And
but I do also think that like to an extent he like has a bit of a point there. I understand. Don't make that face at me. I understand that like the whole like he was totally in the wrong, but also throughout like the first like arc or two, he keeps like putting in, I would say, effort and work, and like yes, it's ultimately selfish motives and whatnot, but he puts in a lot of effort into all of those relationships, and like I know that like it all keeps getting rewound and whatnot. But, like, they just, like, keep killing him. And if it was me, by the third time I was brutally murdered by these people, I would have been fucking gone. Are we allowed to cuss on this show?
Yes.
Good.
No, this is... I don't give a shit.
I was about to say, I've already...
No, but okay, here's the point I want to make for that. Because, like, the thing is, the work Super does in the first two arcs is actually, like, rewarded. And he does, like, form a relationship with these people that they end up appreciating. It's just like in the third arc, that's when like things take a turn for the worse because like his worst traits come to the forefront. Because you think like from the second arc, for example, like, and to be fair, in regards to like the he keeps getting killed, I don't want to make. I kind of hate phrasing it this way because it sounds like I'm like reading from a fucking like point sheet or something, but like. In terms of narrative construction, Return by Death, like Subaru's die and restart thing, is just like a form of narrative punishment in order to have him overcome like his flaws and have the story's themes and whatever grow. So like while it is true that, like, yeah, you'd probably say fuck you to these people. It's just, like, the story kind of, like, has to work this way if it's going to, like, make its thesis statement, you know?
I will say it's a very unique story in that, like, a lot of the consequences, as far as, like, the things that happen, like, the reason that Subaru is the main character is just because of the return by death ability, because the consequences that happen to the other characters don't matter nearly as much because they can be rewound. And, like, Subaru can obviously rewind if he dies, but it still happens to him, and he still has to live with those memories.
Yeah. And those are the things that end up, like, contributing to his growth or whatever. But, like, going back to my point originally, like, Subaru is rewarded for, like, his action in the first 2 arcs. Like, his action in the first arc gets him a place in the mansion, you know? Like, he's put into a situation where he's able to, like, you know, make the deal with Roswell to become an employee and all that. And then, in the second arc, you know, in this mansion arc, like, his heroic actions end up gaining him the undying love and loyalty of Rem, as well as, like, you know, good relationships with the Beatrice and Rom and all these people. And even though he's separated from them because of his stupidity at the beginning of the third arc, like, those relationships are still there, and they only continue to grow from here on. Like, not to really spoil anything, air quotes, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I unless we review, like, the next season of this, I doubt...
Don't worry, we are.
Oh, I hate you.
What do you mean you hate me?
I only hate you because that's a lot to watch. It took me so long to get around to watching all of this season.
Yeah, don't I know it?
Yeah, bugger off. But, that's a good, like, another 5 hours or something.
Okay, well, keep in mind, you won't have to watch anymore until it's, like, back around to my turn.
But...
Let's just hope its school isn't going when it's back around to your turn.
Well, that depends on what you two pick.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. But, with the whole scene where the Lord of the Manor, Roswell, is like, you can have anything you want, anything at all. And he's like, I want to be a servant. I'm like, what? You could have chosen, surely you could do something better than that. And you could argue, oh, it's just like spare the moment. But then he dies and does it again and again and again. It's like, choose something better.
To be fair, I think part of that is just like, Subaru's kind of dumb. And the thing is, well, like, I think to him, he might have thought, like, the only way he could have, like, you know, kept... Because remember, like, throughout that first loop when he dies in his sleep, like, he was super happy by the end of that. So I think part of it might just be because he figures, like, oh, if I'm not a servant, then I probably won't be able to have the same kind of relationships I do with everyone here. And that's arguably even, like, shown to us in the loop when he chooses to just be a guest of the mansion. Because, like, he doesn't, like, nobody really gives him the time of day there because they're like, you're just a fucking freeloader, you know?
Yeah, that's fair.
I was actually getting ready to say, is like, to be fair, they actually, they did go over a bit where Rom was like, why didn't you just say I would like to have eternal residences, or like eternal, like to have like be.
That was Amelia, but yes.
Oh, was it Amelia that said
that?
I could have sworn it was Rom while they were doing work. She was just like,
no, it was Amelia.
It was Amelia? Alright, yeah. Amelia asked that, and then he tried that, and then he alienated himself from both Ram and Ram because Rom. Because...
Random access memory. My favorite character.
Speaking of Rom, though, actually, this is like completely related to everything we're talking about, but just like watching this for the third time through, I think Rom is super underrated. Like, I think she might be slowly becoming one of my favorite characters in ReZero. She's great.
Yeah. You can tell which one of us are, like, PC people because we look at RAM and go, Ram.
Oh, fuck. I think Ram. We all laughed there.
That's fine. Speaking of Subaru being stupid, he really, like, the suicide strat, beautiful. Good strat. He should have used it more.
Oh my god.
Actually, this is where I get to come in as, like, the guy who's read the light novels, because something that, like... ReZero isn't really able to show as well as like when you read it. Return by Death hurts a lot. Like the process of coming back and all that really like is a big like mental and physical emotional toll on Subaru, and that's why he doesn't resort to suicide super often. Because it just sucks.
Okay, that's a relatively satisfying answer. It is also just like, there's no great way of killing yourself, so it's gonna hurt. So, like, that's what I was assuming. It was just like, I was like assuming that you didn't want to die because part of me was like, okay, you know, if whenever you're in situations where you know you're gonna die or like likely to die, like why doesn't he just find a place to kill himself in a less painful way than you like, getting ripped apart like he does several times?
Yeah.
But then I guess if it is super painful to come back, then that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Also, this show is way more like it's like really kind of like sweet sometimes and whatnot, and then like catches you off guard. It like makes you like, "Aww," and then go, "Ah!"
Yeah, no, like you get the full fucking range of temperament watching ReZero, man.
Yeah, there were some very
that's the one thing, because like this kind of goes back to what I was talking about, like how the dialogue is written. Is like the comedy of ReZero is kind of the same way for me, where like sometimes it really works and sometimes it really doesn't. And that's not to say like I'm like cringing when I'm watching it or anything. I'm just not laughing at the jokes, you know?
Yeah, I guess there's something to be said for it. It kind of also caught me off guard how like throughout the whole thing they're like, oh, he's selfish, oh, he's prideful and whatnot, but also at the same time he's like a complete simp. So it's like, I guess it kind of like maybe cognitive dissonance for me, because I can kind of see how you can be like, oh, he's a very prideful simp, but it's like, because there's like a line in there where he's like, I'm fine being a dog if it's Amelia's dog, and I'm like, first of all, simp. Second of all, no, that's bad. That's not a healthy relationship at all.
Okay, well, obviously
Third
that
of
was
all,
a joke, but...
yeah.
Well, I mean, they also expand on that, too, with the confrontation with Amelia and Subaru, where Amelia's like, I just thought you'd be able to see me as some other person, but you can't, or you're not, and then Subaru's like, I can't do that. And, like, obviously that's because he loves her, but, like, before he ever tells her that, like, I feel like that kind of confronts the whole, like, I could just be your dog kind of thing. Like,
okay, no, but
literally
you guys are taking the dog line way too literally.
well, no,
Okay,
but,
but he
like,
is just like a golden retriever.
Oh no, like
Yeah.
he's definitely got those simpish tendencies. But what I was gonna say in regards to like him being prideful and a simp is like in the way that like a lot of like creepy like incel types do, in the fact that he thinks like he deserves Amelia,
Oh, yeah.
Like I think of
Okay,
that
that's
scene
fair.
where he's talking about like, oh, I was so useful to you. It's like I don't. This is gonna sound darker than I mean it, but it's something like that's kind of tracked with like how abusers sometimes do things, where they like you can be in a situation where you feel like you're not being treated emotionally right, but somebody is like trying to manipulate you by being like, oh, but I'm so useful to you. I do X, Y, or Z or whatever. To try and make themselves seem as valuable, even though they like are detrimental to your mental health.
He's like, I'm so cool, I deserve bitches. And then it's like, I see.
No, you do not.
So
you
even though
you need to go through your character arc first, and then you can get some bitches. Because like ReZero, more like ReZero for how he's constantly
gosh.
fumbling these bitches.
oh my god.
Okay.
Speaking
I
of
will
the-
say, for an anime, I have very much appreciated how this one did not have anime quote-unquote fan service nearly to the extent that some other shows do.
Yeah.
So I was like whenever Taryn suggested an anime, I was like, shit, I gotta put up with that again.
okay.
Was it? Wait.
We've had this talk before, but for all the shit you give me, I've never recommended you a show that you out and out hated.
Yes, this is true.
Isn't like the only quote unquote fan service they have is technically Roswald with the bathhouse scene? Yeah.
Kind of, but I mean...
Well, not bathhouse scene.
Well,
but
that
like,
just kind of goes like what you consider fan service. Like, Rom and Rem kind of walk around in, I don't know if you'd call them skimpy maid uniforms, but
They're not
like...
skimpy.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say they're skimpy either, but like, maids are a fetish for a lot of
it
people.
is. I
Which,
mean, there's a reason.
yeah,
There's a
insane.
reason Rem became an icon for like, hentai and shit for a while, or like fan service. Yeah.
You
Why
know
are you
this
saying
is
why?
why?
Or at least not hentai, but Rule
Why
34.
are you going at us as if that's unacceptable? I mean, Rule 34 is literally, if it exists, there's
When-
porn of it.
I know.
No,
I know.
when
I was like-
ReZero, the reason I know this is because when ReZero blew up, you could not escape it. There was body pillows, there were posters, there was fan service.
Well, part
everywhere.
of that just has to
This
do
is
with
why I have
that
a
was
tendency
part of
to
that just has to do
avoid
with
anime.
Rem being like the most popular character in the season. Speaking of, actually, this is just a minor thing.
I was just into anime in general for a while.
Yeah, this is just a minor thing, but in From Zero, when Subaru and Ren have their talk, something that I don't think gets enough attention is like, I think the way, like, once they've like had their big talk, basically. And, like, the I love Amelia line, that gets a lot of shit, but honestly, I feel like that was, like, the most mature way Subaru could have handled it, because, like, if he, like, wasn't upfront about how he, like, really felt, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, didn't tell Rem, like, I love Amelia, I still care about you a lot, and I want to be your friend. It's like, that's, if he, like, didn't say that, I think it'd be way shittier, because he's kind of leading her on at that point.
I feel like,
you know?
I feel like people were just, like, really salty because Rem poured her whole heart out, and they were just like, oh, no, I want Rem Subaru love story, ship,
Yeah,
and then they're like,
I
no.
was literally about to say, like, honestly, people who are like, wow, Subaru's so shitty for not accepting Rem's confession, that's just how you know that they are, like, very bitchless.
I suppose.
I suppose.
Oh my gosh. That has, like, only lightly... I've gotten rid of it now, more or less, but it was seeping in... Because she didn't, like, appear at all in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
But whenever I was binging this and trying to get caught up to you guys, and it was just, I suppose, all of the time, I was, like, it started to seep into my vocabulary.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no!
Hey, man, Beatrice is adorable. No one would blame you.
I do want to, also I want to say...
Irrelevant, but okay.
I do want to say this, to not pull out the dub or sub argument thing, and because I also don't really care if you like sub, you like sub, but I'm just going to say this, with how in-depth with the like, talking goes into the show, unless you're just a really fast reader, I feel like, or if you're a Japanese speaker, or, like, no Japanese,
Yeah.
like, I feel like just dub is the way to go.
Yeah,
like,
well, on top of the fact that this ReZero dub is just incredible.
oh yeah, the ReZero
Like, it's
dub
so
is
fucking
really
good.
good.
Actually-
But I do also want to say this because, like, I started watching the show before a dub came out, so, like, I know what the sub was like, and I got so much more detailed. I understood so much more when I watched it again, but with all of it dubbed, I was like, holy shit, this makes a whole lot more sense now. Or, wow, these are some little details that I just completely blanked on.
Dyslexic ass bitch couldn't read. No, I'm kidding. Okay, but actually, this is like, just because this is something I wanted to get in here, and this isn't so much concerned with you. I just have a beef with ReZero fans for a second here. Because
Okay.
people like me who have, like, read the light novels and seen the show, there's, like, been arguments about, like, you know, how good of an adaptation the ReZero anime is. And I think anybody who tries to argue, like, it isn't a good adaptation is just so fucking stupid.
Oh, yeah.
Like, one of the big things, like, they talk about how, oh, there are, like, a lot of missing moments. And the thing is, the thing you have to realize is, like, when you're adapting one work to another medium, like, some things that work in one situation don't work for another. Like, one of the biggest complaints, sorry, just let me get here and then you go. One of the biggest complaints is, like, there is a, like, pretty significant reveal that's, like, in the books that wasn't in the first season of the anime, and I'm gonna spoil this, but who cares. The reveal is that, Aldebaran, who, if you don't remember who he is, that's, the guy who is, Priscilla's knight, the, big titty bitch who's, like, the one who Subaru comes to the royal selection with. The guy with the helmet.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay. So, in the books, in the carriage ride where they go to the royal selection, he reveals that he's from Japan, too, like Subaru. And yeah, I know that's like, oh my god, that's such a big reveal. Why would they take that out? But here's something you have to consider, right? Like, I don't know why they took it out. It could just be like they didn't have the time. But the thing is, like, that is an important reveal, but Aldebaran is not important. Like, he doesn't show up at all, like, throughout the majority of the third arc. And considering, like, you were surprised by that revelation, like, it doesn't... Is anything really, like, changed or made better if you did know that?
Yeah.
And, like, there's also opportunities for them to just, like, slip that scene back in for, like, when it actually becomes relevant.
Yeah, and
because, like, he's not in... Because, like,
It's
he's
not.
barely in the second half of this season. He's not in the fourth season at all. I know he's going to be in the third season, which is coming out, because I've read the books. But, like, already in my head, I can very easily imagine a scenario where they, like, can just, like, slide that scene in where Aldebaran pulls Subaru aside and is like, by the way, I'm from Japan, too.
Yeah. Sorry, you confused me for a second there because you went from, like, he doesn't barely show up in the first season or the second season, and then he's like, he's not in the fourth season at all, and then he went back to the third season. I'm like, did you skip a season when reading or something?
Oh, I
Like,
said, I might have fucked up because I might have been trying to say arc 4,
Oh, okay.
because that's what's adapted in the second season, the fourth arc of the books.
Okay, I was like,
Yeah,
Sorry about that. I had to derail the podcast to rant about that for a second, but
Yeah, I think there's something with the whole losing details through adaptations. Obviously, I haven't read the light novel or anything like that. Also, I find that light novels are never light; they're always very long. But you can't. It's like the same argument with the Harry Potter. Whenever they're like, "Oh, there was so much more detail in the book," and it would be so long of a movie if you tried to take a book or that's just a thing that happens is you can't fit as much detail from the book. It happened with Game of Thrones and Harry Potter and anything ever. It was a book, now it's a show or a movie. You can't get it all.
Not to mention there's some things in the books that are kind of racy, but we don't talk about that.
I'm glad that those didn't get it out.
Are you talking about Game of Thrones or Harry Potter?
Oh, I was talking about Harry Potter with that because you mentioned Harry Potter.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the light novel, which I.
No, I'm talking about the Harry Potter. You mentioned Harry Potter books.
Well, we won't get too sidetracked on Harry Potter.
Yeah. Let's. You were talking about ReZero. Let's not get too sidetracked.
Okay. Well, while we're jumping back to ReZero, you would think that he would get I can't say because I've never died before, but you would think that he could get a little bit better at dying gracefully and being this is which he does kind of by the end of the show, but it's just this is, and I'm oh man, I know that's gonna happen, but it's fine, I'll come back, I know I will. But he's he doesn't get any better about it. You would think he would learn to die a little gracefully.
Well, you gotta remember, most of his deaths aren't exactly short, and also he dies in a lot of different ways, He also
he's also just trying his hardest to make a run not go to waste, so he tries his hardest to live. Yeah,
remember one of my favorite Subaru lines is actually back in the first arc. And he says, as long as I've got life, I've got to fight. And I think that kind of puts it all into perspective.
Fair enough, I suppose. But,
I suppose.
I hate you all.
It's fine.
Okay, so I'm assuming this is something that'll be explained later, and we shouldn't cover it. But, the witch gave him return by death, right? Is that...
Yeah. No, that's not even really a spoil. I feel it's not said directly, but yeah, Satella made a contract with Subaru to give him return by death.
I'm assuming that eventually gets explained in the later seasons.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or not even in season 2. I'm speaking from a light novel perspective, and I won't spoil anything. But it eventually
gets explained.
Yeah.
That's actually I hate to mention the past point with the dub and sub thing, but it's just a funny mention as an example as to something I completely didn't understand, and then I made total sense when I watched the dub. Was when I initially watched the sub, I was so confused for a little while, and it didn't really make complete sense to me why Amelia didn't give her real name and gave her name as Satella to Subaru. But then when I watched the dub, I realized, that's just her testing him to make sure, or to see if he actually knows anything.
Yeah.
Because if she said her name was Satella and he knew anything, he would freak the fuck out.
Yeah, it's her racism vibe check.
Yeah.
Actually though.
I that's sure one of the ways to phrase it. One of the ways of all time, in fact.
No, you're good. You're good.
But,
Where am I getting that one?
Oh, yeah. But,
I will say it was, a very satisfying kind of, growth moment where you see a little bit of growth from, Subaru after, the whole thing goes, in the third arc, it all goes to crap, and the village dies and gets wiped out for, the third time, and then he finally gets it right, and everything's planned, and he was actually smart about it, and the scene with the spy where he's now you know how it feels. That was kind of satisfying.
Yeah, no, that was great. Also, okay, actually, because I'm surprised they have brought all this back, Betelgeuse is a great villain.
Yeah.
He's the witch cult guy.
Beetle. I just say Beetlejuice because the dub gets it wrong, but it's whatever.
What do you mean they get it? It's
the original translation of it is actually Beetlejuice. It is a meme. It's kind of a meme in a bunch of other shows that have had that name in it. But the original translation is Beetlejuice. That's why the movie Beetlejuice calls it Beetlejuice with the juice. And then when they have a bit in the movie, they go, Beetlegeist? What's Beetlegeist? And then he changes the name to Beetlejuice.
Oh.
Yeah, because that's the translation.
Well, I'm going to keep saying it Betelgeuse anyways.
Yeah. Beetlejuice.
Okay, well.
Yeah, but Betelgeuse is great, because, because I talked a bit before during my 5 minutes about how Subaru and Rem were foils for each other in that arc. Well, the same is very much true for Subaru and Betelgeuse in the third arc, because Betelgeuse is basically the final form of all of Subaru's worst traits. Because in the same way that Subaru is kind of possessive with Amelia, he's hyper possessive with the Witch of Envy, his idea of Satella. And even after he's literally shown that Satella doesn't give a shit about him by Subaru, in the last episode, because he goes into Subaru and Subaru's I can return by death, and Satella smacks his ass out of his body.
Yeah.
Right? He's shown that Satella doesn't care about him, and he still desperately clings to his idea of Satella. Think about the scene in the carriage when he's desperately trying to grab the gospel again, which is at this point basically proven to be all bullshit. So I just think it's very satisfying to see Subaru literally overcome all the worst parts of himself as embodied by this character.
I will say something you kind of reminded me of. His whole plan to defeat Beetlejuice was, basically to do that over and over again and expecting and not hurt him and whatnot. And he was yeah, my plan was to just suffer about it until you eventually gave up, but you only lasted 1 round, so great. And so okay, a little bit of respect for building this is what needs to happen, and even though it'll suck, I'll do it anyway.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. No, man, I just, there are more things I want to talk about. Shit, let's pull out the fucking talking points list.
Ooh, I do want to say, I feel like there was some, I feel like they should have been more clear about how the whole, thing with the whale, I'm trying to think, the whole thing with the whale where whenever the whale kills somebody, they just completely erase from the people's minds in existence. They just don't know who they are. They just don't exist anymore. And I wish they were more clear about that, because there are times in the fight, people died in the fight. Everyone remembers who died.
Okay, well here's because for me, I think it's something pretty clear where it's not just getting killed by the whale isn't what does it. It's getting killed by its fog specifically. The fog is what causes people's memories to be lost or whatever.
Because the one old guy's whole character is based around vengeance for killing his wife, but clearly he didn't forget her, so you can just assume that she died from getting smacked.
I guess I was just a little confused because I knew that. I was just a little confused as to what caused them to forget. Was it to what the specifics were? But yeah.
Yeah.
It was said in the show at one point, but
yeah. I don't know.
He just isn't paying attention well.
Bro, I'm paying attention on us. Bro. No, it's because it's my bad for not taking any notes. It's also been a bit of time.
The second half.
Yeah.
It's also been a couple of weeks, so I may just forgot the point.
Yeah. Okay, so this is another thing where I'm just kind of ranting at how people react to this show, but this is just again something I want to get in here, because something that kind of annoys me is people's tendency to prop up ReZero by shitting on other isekai stories. That drives me nuts. Not because if people like ReZero more than other isekai stories, that's fine. I don't give a shit. But I do think it's shitty to make these comparisons where your thesis statement is A is better than B. Yeah. That's so not valuable to me because one, chances are these stories, well, not even chances are, even if stories are exploring the same core ideas, the conclusions they're going to arrive at will be different. And so trying to say, one is, doing it better than another is just, no, it's just telling it in a different way. Or it's really just more a case of personal preference at that point, where it's I prefer it being told this way. And that's fine, but then just say that instead of being this is the best way to do it. Because that's bullshit. There's no right way to tell a story.
Yeah, I can't say much because I literally earlier today just came out of watching a video essay about them saying the antagonist in the new Guardians of the Galaxy Marvel film was better than the most recent Ant-Man film. And
I've seen that video I recommended. I've seen videos like that because YouTube is flooded with craptastic comparison videos that. And they always piss me off because that's it. The amount of comparison videos that are actually good analytical videos is so small.
I feel like there is value to that in the terms of I feel like there is a wrong ways to write characters, and it's a lot easier to explain why that is when you have something to compare it to.
I disagree wholeheartedly. Honestly, I think if you're incapable of criticizing something without praising another work, or vice versa, praising another work by criticizing something else, then you're just a fucking hack, and you need to learn how to write things better. Because, like, my problem is, like, why do we have to frame it this way? Like, why can't you just make a video where you talk about why you didn't like Ant-Man antagonist, and also a video about why you liked the Guardians 3 antagonist? Because you can do both those things. Like, the comparison isn't necessary.
You can still, like, do, like, a hate and then a love video, and then, yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Just to try and get more people to go click with their short attention span brains.
Yes.
On 2 videos.
Anyways, back to ReZero.
Yeah, back to ReZero. I didn't get to fully expand upon my thoughts on Arc 3 because I was talking too much, but I wanted to like kind of complete my analysis there because this was something else I actually picked up on with this viewing. But I do really like how like after, you know, Subaru fucks up with Amelia and he's like saying at Cruchet's mansion, I do think it's really interesting and like really effective how like he like doesn't like really try to understand like why Amelia was mad at him and see like, you know, maybe what he might have done wrong. Instead he just like he literally like says in the show like when Cruchet comes to him about the fact like that the witch cult is moving, he's like basically like, yes, I have a problem that I can solve and now I will seem useful to Amelia again. Like, he basically takes the first opportunity he can to not think about any of his problems, so, like, focusing on, like, this new obstacle that he can, like, overcome, right? And in, like, a kind of monkey's paw situation, you know, the witch cult ends up putting him through hell, you know? And it's only after he finally does, like, take the time to, like, understand what he's doing wrong in a person and what he can do better that he's actually able to, like, overcome the obstacles put in his path.
Yes,
I just think it's a great story.
I can't exactly blame him because, like, if I'm sitting there trying to work on myself and then someone's like, I'm going to kill all your friends and family, I'm going to pay more attention to that than my personal character flaws. So, I feel like the point that you made is, like, a little bit invalid, but still
well, like, because here's the thing, it's like... It kind of goes back to the whole, like, return by death just being, like, on an analytical level, return by death being a form of narrative punishment, where it's like, Subaru, because the show never out and out criticizes Subaru's desire to try and protect the people he loves. It does criticize the ways he tries to go about it, especially when he's, like, basically making up bullshit so he can seem like a hero, right? And so, like, in this example... when he just, like, hears about this... Because here's the thing. Remember in the actual scene, Cruchet really doesn't give him, like, any details. She basically just says, like, hey, the witch cult is moving, and, like, if he was really, like, you know, interested in protecting them, maybe he should have, I don't know, engaged with her a bit more, try to figure out what the witch cult's doing, investigate around the capital of Lagunica or whatever. You know, then he... would have like had an actual chance of doing that, but instead he just immediately runs off. Alright, but we have been going for a bit, and so to finish it off, I'd like all of us to give our top 3 favorite moments from the season, and like why we enjoyed them real quick, and then like a quick conclusion, and then Elijah, if you know what you want to do, share it with us.
I suppose the whole, I listed this earlier, but the satisfying moment wherever he's, like, telling the spy and, like, he's finally coming out a handle on things. I mean, like everyone likes the conclusion the most, you know, the scene where, like, he throws the gospel and, Beetlejuice is, like, gonna hit him and is dying, and Subaru doesn't, like, dodge or flinch, and because he knows that the hand will dissipate before it reaches his face. Very badass. Third moment. Can't think of one immediately off the top of my head. So
you said he likes the, you know, final scene between Subaru and Amelia.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I'll give mine then, just because mine are like really easy and really simple. For me, it's like going from bottom to top. It's gonna be the Subaru and Rem's conversation after the battle with the Mob Beast. Subaru and Rem's conversation in From Zero, and then the final conversation between Subaru and Amelia. They're just all super, like, I just love the raw emotion in all those scenes between both those characters. Like, it's just they're like great condensed cathartic moments that like fully express the series themes, and that's why I love them so much. So how about you?
I feel like my top 3 would have to be the fight with the final fight with like Beetlejuice and taking care of him, and like how they took care of the fight and having Subaru outsmart him, especially with abusing Satella's like punishment towards him as like a way of fighting Beetlejuice. The second one I would have to say is the Rem and Subaru confrontation on top of the building, just because that's just an iconic scene within the show. Like, it's just, and not to mention the entire show, like the entire episode. I mean, the entire episode there is just that. So it's just that entire conversation of Subaru coming to terms with his feelings and everything. And then the last one I just have to say is the fight scene with the whale mob beast, because god damn, that shit was fire.
That shit goes hard.
That does.
Oh, yeah, and just final conclusions. I really love ReZero to death. As a whole, I do feel like it's a narrative that's kind of like peaks and valleys for me, and I think that's like when we cover season 2, the next time I get to go, I'll get to go a bit more into that, I think. But I do gotta say, as a whole, I do feel like the first season of ReZero is like a perfect season of television. Like, it's just so good. You guys got any conclusive thoughts?
It's good. Like I said, I'm not much of an anime person. I did enjoy watching the show. I very much enjoyed that there was no fan service. And I did enjoy watching the character development of Subaru.
I definitely really enjoyed the show. I love the first season of ReZero, even with its like little minor flaws that I have with it. It's still really good in my opinion. I will say though, it does make me nervous whenever we do watch the second season, just because the last time I tried to watch the second season, I fell off of it because I knew I didn't really care for it that much when that happened. So.
Well, hey, you can just voice all that if we end up doing it.
Maybe we should put an hour limit on like the amount of that content, because I was like joking around about like choosing like the entirety of Critical Role.
Oh.
Because that's like that's an extreme example.
Yeah. I think it's fine. Like, it's a single season of television. Like, if a single season is like 50 episodes or something, then we'll condense it down. But like 25 episodes in a season is like pretty standard for a lot of shit. So I feel like it's fair.
Yeah, but 25 episodes, like, it's like 3 hours long each. It's like,
well, if we talked about like the Batman, that movie is 3 hours long.
No, it's 3 hours per episode long.
What?
Critical Role.
Oh, well, we wouldn't do that. Okay,
long.
well, we wouldn't do that anyways, because I've talked about this with Elijah, but like, there's not really anything we can analyze in a D&D podcast, I feel like, because it's really more just like the vibes you get with watching these people.
Yeah.
But anyways, Elisha, like, you don't have to if you really can't think of anything, but if you have thought about what you're going to present for the next episode, feel free to share it. And
my cursory thought
all
is
5 viewers can follow along.
My cursory thought is RimWorld, but I don't know that you two would enjoy that. And RimWorld has a bit of a learning curve.
Dude. Like, just do what you think would be enjoyable.
We'll have to see.
I feel like I would enjoy RimWorld.
All right then.
Yeah.
So it looks like maybe we'll be doing RimWorld next time, or if not, I might make a community post on my channel about it. But regardless, this was the first episode of the Low-Key Variety Hour, the new art talk podcast that always hopes to give you a fresh perspective on the art we talk about. Signing off.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.